All right, good evening. Carl, One Tip Genius here with a very quick reminder and update for you. So, often speak of the mind. I say that the nature of mind is by far the most important topic one could ever talk about because it is from our mind that we perceive reality. And we decide what is real and what is not. We decide through what other people's minds tell us what things mean, how to interpret what's going on. And especially, I mean, it's always true, but especially these days, to find out what's actually real is probably the biggest challenge that one could ever pursue. What is actually real with a capital R versus what's perceived to be true? And the power of perception, and then the power of that perception to be spread among others, is profound. Look how quickly, when an event happens, how people start talking about it in a certain way. You will hear them say common phrases, or they will speak verbatim from what they heard from another source, a news source, or a friend, or a family member. And I'm always constantly questioning what is real, because otherwise we're delusional, right? And part of reality is that we are delusional. That's not a judgment, that's just an observational fact. We are delusional to varying degrees. In other words, to find out what's actually real is the hardest damn thing to do. And if one can get better at perceiving what's actually true, your life changes. You have more options, more choices. And then to even go further than that, to realize that the mind is constantly coloring and filtering and labeling reality, and that is a representation of what's real and not what actually is real. When we really get that, we can then take it to the next stage and say, well, you know what? If what my mind gives me is only a slight representation of what's real, but ain't necessarily so, that means I can also be intentionally, this sounds a little weird, but intentionally delusional, meaning I can place meaning on the events of my life, that they're not ascribed to the event itself. So when something bad happens, we perceive it as such initially. But the real freedom is when we can reinterpret what's going on outside of what our mind initially interprets it as. That's true freedom and power. When you can reinterpret reality to have it work for you instead of against you, knowing full well that it's only a representation, that what's actually real is the most elusive thing in the world under most circumstances. I mean, if you look at the world, I mean, that is the essential challenge. Everybody has a different version of what's true and what's not, what's good and what's bad, right? Isn't that the essential challenge? So that's why I talk about the mind so often, because it gets it to the source of what's going on, not the specifics of the particular challenge. The specifics of the challenge are often within the construct of the mind and how it interprets reality. And we want to be able to step back and just observe and question, poke holes in what we think is so certain. So that's my reminder for you. As you wake up tomorrow, and maybe, just maybe, you remember the notion of question what you think is real. Hold on loosely. It may seem like a scary thing, like if we don't know what's going on. Well, we already don't know what's going on. We think we do. And we have a certain ability to know what's real, like in terms of discernment, right? Red light, green light. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what do the events of your life mean? What do they mean? And that's up to you to decide. Knowing full well that your mind is going to place meaning on something before you, the essence of who you are, gets to decide. That's why I separate the essence of who I am, the ability to observe, the other part, the mind. Because normally they're one thing. We are our thoughts. And so when, from time to time, just for a little bit, I stand back and I just watch my mind. You can do that, right? You can just watch the thoughts going through. Who's the observer? That's you. That's the you I'm referring to. So the more we can separate who you are from what your mind is giving you, and again, anytime you forget, just observe, watch your mind like a movie. And then you know what I'm speaking of has some potential truth to it. That there's a difference between who you are, the essence of you, that part of you that can observe, right, versus your mind. Now, I know this full well, but yet I also know that throughout the day, most of the time, I am my mind as well. I am my thoughts. And I don't have time to be questioning it. I'm doing my doing. So you recognize that normally we are our thoughts. Whatever's occurring, it's just who we are and it's what we're doing. But the ability to, from time to time, step back and observe what your mind is giving you is the most important skill one could ever have, period, bar none. But it's also the hardest thing to talk about. I mean, I wish sometimes that I talked about simple things, or maybe, being a person who sells widgets or something. Here, you want my widget? It's great, right? But, the work that I do, I recognize it's one of the hardest things in the world to do is to speak of the nature of the mind and point to it. Because on some level, that's all there is. All there is mind, meaning the perception of reality. Try and get outside of that. It's pretty tricky, huh? And we can't totally, completely get outside of the mind, except maybe for brief moments. I might question that, what I just said there. But even if you can just become the observer for even 1 or 2 seconds, like, wait, I just noticed my mind gave me these thoughts. Are they true? Are they always true? Is there some other way of looking at this thing? This bad thing that's frustrating the crap out of me right now, if I stop fighting it, maybe, just maybe, I can find something within that situation. I can get creative with it. And that's the true power, is to be able to have the creative ability to reinterpret reality so it works for you. And we can do that, right? And we might think, well, that's delusional. Well, we're delusional anyway. The mind is giving us stuff that is only one little part of reality, not the whole totality, the whole truth kind of thing, right? So every single human being, that's the essential challenge as far as I can tell when all is said and done. What's real? What's not? And not even just that, either or, it's what else is true. Because there are many truths concurrently happening all at the same time. So the nature of reality is pretty tricky stuff, isn't it? And again, it's because the mind is so good at interpreting reality and then placing that interpretation into your now right here and projecting it so that that's all you see and think, feel, and believe. That's why it's so hard to get outside the effects of one's mind. As a matter of fact, they cannot be stopped. They can only be observed from time to time because mind has its own agenda. And we're living inside of it. Kind of freaky to think about when you think about it first time. But after a while, you kind of get used to it. It's like, yeah, I get it. There's reality, and then there's what my mind thinks is real. And the difference could not be more different quite often. And again, reality is much more nuanced and complicated, and yet simple. It's much more nuanced, and it's also paradoxical in nature. But the mind has a hard time with things like contradictions and paradoxes, two coexisting, seemingly contradictory truths at the same time. Well, no, it's either this is true or it's that is true. Well, no, we can have multiple truths happening at the same time. That's the essential human challenge as far as I can tell. Let me know your thoughts. Again, I figure that for humanity to get to the next level, it depends on our ability to step outside the effects, the creations of one's own mind, individually and collectively. Have a contrary thought? Let me know. Let me know your thoughts about these thoughts. Most important thing that we could ever talk about, and yet it's kind of the hardest thing to talk about. What's real? Such a simple question, but wow, what a challenge. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions. Next time you find yourself questioning about things like about your abilities, for example, or the feasibility of a particular goal or dream that you have, an outcome that you want. Next time you find yourself, it's politics season right now, especially when you find yourself finding out some news, quote unquote. Question it. Is it true? Watch your reaction to it. Open your mind to other interpretations, but yet know the essence of, on some level, we do know it's true. I have to believe. Or maybe that's not true. Is it? I don't know. What do you think? I do know one thing. Anytime that I can reinterpret what my mind gives me, it gives me more possibilities and more options and choices. And all of a sudden, I feel like I have a creative say in how my life goes and how, most importantly, I enjoy and experience my life. Because you know what? You could have everything you could possibly want. And there are certain things that you would want so that you can feel better, you'd be happy, more fulfilled. We have particular goals, dreams, whatever, objectives, our to-do list that we have to get done. And once we get it done, we're going to feel better and stuff. We have those things that we think that once we achieve those things, we're going to get a certain result. We're going to be happy as a general statement. But people, like, for example, I'll give a real simple example. People who have a lot of money, are they happier than people who don't? I know some people who have more money than they know what to do with, and they're not necessarily happy. Because I don't care what you have in your life, if you don't have some say in the nature of your mind, your state of being, regardless of the circumstances, then you're going to still be the victim to your circumstances. And then when you realize that, oh my gosh, I got that, the car, the house, the girlfriend, the dream job, whatever, I make a ton of money and yet I'm still not happy. I know people like that. They have everything that they thought that they needed to be happy, but they're not. What's the difference? Nature of mind. It should be taught in all schools. The ability to observe one's own mind and to question what it gives you in terms of what's real and what's not. So that's what I'll leave you with. Question what your mind tells you and have fun with it. Because when you start poking holes at this stuff and take it a little bit less seriously and gamifying it, everything can change from there. Now, this is just a brief discussion on such a deep topic that we can go forever on this topic and really get real with it. I just talk about it, but experientially know what it's like to wake up from the creations of one's own mind and to reinterpret. So you need more freedom, create creative power in your life, be more flexible, adaptable, innovative. Where other people are freaking out and pushing against stuff, you're reinterpreting those challenges and transformation and new growth, for example. Hey, what's the opportunity within this problem? Inventors do it all the time, right? They take a problem and create something new from it. That's a mindset. That is a perception of reality. Difference. I could go on forever for it. Take it in. Think about it. Notice what you notice. Poke little holes into what you think is true in any particular situation and see what you come up with. There you go. See ya.